Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are back again on the couch with Martin Colclough, and I've got a special guest this morning. His name is Mr. Andrew Ford, and I've known Andrew for several years now. He's been on some of my courses. I've taught him several things actually, but I don't want to talk about myself. We're going to talk about Andrew. He likes to be called Andy, so from now on we're going to be calling him Andy. So good morning, Andy, and welcome to the couch.
Good morning, Martin, and it's good to be here. Thank you.
As I do with all my guests, I'd like to thank you for offering to be on the couch. And it was quite a surprise when I just flippantly texted you a message and you said, "Oh, are you putting any more interviews up?" And I said to you, "Oh, would you like to come?" And you went, "Okay."
Yes, okay, yeah. It's great to be here. Thanks. Have a chat. Yeah.
Thanks very much for the offer. And I'm sure the people are going to find it interesting. But as I explained, pre-interview, I do like to keep some of the questions standard so that people out there get an idea of what brings some of us into it. It isn't always, the loss of a loved one. Some people are natural mediums. Some people come in with just an interest. So your love of spiritualism, I know, is obvious to me, and your love of mediumship, because I know that you balance both in the same thing, your spirituality and your mediumship. What brought you into it all, Andy?
Yeah, we are going back some years now, when my children were a lot younger than they are now, and so was I. The actual godparents of my children were spiritualists. And we used to go around and see them, and every time I saw them, I had loads and loads of questions. And I think in the end, they got a bit fed up with me. I was a pain in their sort of in that part of the body to them.
Yes.
And they basically said, "Oh, why don't you just come along? Bring the kids." It was coming up to Christmas time. They said, we'll have a great time. We'll have the place decked out because it's Christmas. Bring the kids along to the church for the Christmas service, which we did. We took them along, and it was my first time in a Spiritist church, and it was, to me, it was absolutely fascinating, Yes. And it was quite funny because I've got twins. I've got Adam, my son, and Hannah, my daughter. And my daughter said to me, she said, "Daddy," she said, about the meeting, she said, "If the man doesn't understand the story, why doesn't he read it from the book?"
Out of the mouths of children, eh?
Very true, yes. So that started my interest, and then after Christmas, I started to go regularly to the church for the Sunday services, and it literally was every time I walked in through that door, my grandmother, who was on my dad's side, came through every week and kept on about healing.
Yes.
To the point where the actual church healer, a leader, came up to me and she said to me, "You've had so many messages." She said, "I think you need to join me. Would you like to join us?" And that started my I suppose, part of my pathway, because I then joined the church as a healer, took up doing the SNU healing course and things like that, and for a number of years, I was a healer within the church, and then obviously continued to attend the services as well. And it was like, well, they got me in the church, and then that was it. There was no escape after that.
Yeah, I just like to clear something up there for the viewers, because not all the viewers will be spiritualists. And when Andy talks about the SNU, that's the Spiritualist National Union. And as was said in the previous interview with Tim Abbott, if you go and look up the www.snu.org, you'll find the Spiritualist National Union and things they can offer you if you're thinking to want to develop yourself. I want to touch on something you said there, Andy, when you spoke about the children and the family. How have you found it? How have you been able to balance the two lives? Because I know that you have a full-time job, but you're also more or less a full-time medium. How do you find the time, and how do you balance the two?
You're quite right. It is difficult at times, because went through the early days where I was involved in helping to run the church as president and medium secretary, and it was at that stage I was married for a good number of years, and then things happened and that marriage broke down. And then since then, it's been a case of actually balance out having like a full-time job which I often do during the day, then doing my stuff in the evenings and weekends, and also, yeah, having a relationship. It is tricky to balance, and it's not easy because you do need somebody that is with you that is actually very understanding. Because I suppose I'm terrible because, you know, if somebody rings me up and says, "Do you want to do a booking?" and I want to do the booking, I do it. You know, I'm a bit sort of selfish like that, I suppose. Really, it's a bit like, oh no, because of this is so big a part of me. It's a bit like, well, I can't deny it, and I'm not going to restrict it, and I need to do it.
Yes.
So the fact is that, you know, that does mean that I'm sort of, yeah, that I do end up sort of working a lot of the time, when it does put pressure on relationships. And I think the fact is that within my own life, there have been people that come into my life and then it's ended. I'm not raised the spiritual side of things. I think it's a bit like when people say to me, there's a saying about people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And I think people have certainly come into my life to help and support me in different ways, different aspects at different times in my life.
Yes.
And I think, you know, it's again, it is a balance, but it's part of me. So that's what people have to accept, because it is part of me.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. So I want to go back to you when you said you were in the church, to move on to my second question. We've heard, you know, when I came into it, they said to us, oh, you have to sit and you've got to sit and you're not allowed to say anything. And I think I came in 23 years ago in a bit of a change in the movement, because I developed really quickly after my father passed. But were you in that time where you had to sit for a long time before you, how was your development basically?
I think I came in, yeah, as that was changing really, because at that stage I was attending a little church just outside of Salisbury at the Wilton Spiritist church. It was a small little church. It had an open circle which was run by a local medium, and basically there was only usually about 4 or 6 of us used to attend. It was very constant, and from the start I was always encouraged to give what I got. So I was, you know, I wasn't told, oh no, you have to sit there for a year not saying anything, you know. And I think a lot of people say to me, oh, I can't imagine you sitting there for a year and not saying anything, you know. And it's really like, well, no, because, you know, it's a bit like, oh, you know, I can feel it, so I want to say it. So again, we were encouraged to express from a very, you know, from the start, from the time I walked in. So the fact is that, you know, it became very natural for the fact of, hold on a minute, you know, this is what I'm getting, and I was allowed to say and express it. And then, of course, then the medium would help me with that. Yeah. So, you know, to me, that worked for me.
That's very similar to my own development. As soon as I joined the circle, and I remember the president's name was Sally. And I'd been looking for a church. I'd been to one church, but that was one church where you had to be a member for like 20 years before they'd invite you into the circle, you know. And then when you got in the circle, you couldn't speak for another 20 years. And by the time you're allowed to speak, you actually came through as a message rather than being a medium. And somebody told me about this other church. And I remember I went in, and the president, Sally, said to me, "You've got the gift." So I was thinking, okay, what's the gift? I've just been drawn to this because I'm hearing voices, I'm seeing pictures and seeing people. What's the gift? So they were quite a forward-thinking church. You know, they did explain, the way you explained it is the way they did it. You sat down in a circle. There was a young lady teaching us, and, you know, I'm fighting to remember her name because her mum's a very good friend of mine. She's still a very good friend. And she very much encouraged us to give what, like you said, give what you get. So your development obviously went well because you're healing, the presence of the church, you're sitting in a circle. So when did you actually serve your first church?
Funny enough, it was at the Wilton, the local church. We had a year when a lot of the mediums were going sick. Normally, you know, we did get some good notice, so I could actually try and book another medium. But I can remember one night, it was 6:25. We had 5 minutes to go. The no medium, nobody turned up. And I'd said to the lady who was chairing that night, I said, well, I'm just going to have to do it then, aren't I? This, you know, I mean, I've got no choice. I said, it's not so bad, because looking out, I said, it's a quiet night. You know, there's only about half a dozen people here. Yeah, I'll be fine. No problem. Let me just pop out the back and get a reading. So I quickly went out the back, found something, walked back in the church, and they say my actual sort of jaw hit the floor. There were 30 people sat there. And I said, how did you get 30 people in that quickly? You know, and it was like, well, I've committed to this now, so I can't back out. I'll have to do it. So it was a bit like, you know, with knees knocking in, sort of, oh my God, what have I now decided to do? I did the first service. And it sort of started from there. You know, I did other stand-ins because we had other cancellations. There was another lady who used to sit in circle also called Mary. She would sometimes come up and we'd do the service together. And then what would happen was that over a period of time, other churches then found out that I was doing this.
Yes.
So, you know, so I then got bookings from other churches to go out and to sort of experience different places and different people, which again which is a great development, because sitting in circle is great because you're sat in a lovely energy with other people. Then suddenly you're out into a church where actually it's your responsibility then.
Yes.
I'm sure the energy's right and you're in the right place, you know. And again, it's part and parcel of, for me, I think, or any medium, of actually furthering our development, because it takes us out there, you know. And the fact is that you then get to looking out at people, you know, they're looking back at you, and you can see the sort of almost the expectation in their faces. Or, you know, the fact of sometimes in some of the other churches, as you know, they sit there with their arms folded and go, right, prove it to me then, you know.
Yes.
So you're having to deal with that psychology of trying to get all that out of your mind and just do the job that you're supposed to do. And that's work with the spirit world, you know.
Yeah. Well, leading on from that question, because it was part of the question, that first service, did it go well?
It did go well. I mean, as I said, I would say that if I look back at it, you know, it's one of those sort of things that my messages, obviously, in the early days were obviously slower.
Yes.
You know, and it took practice of actually doing it within that environment to build up a speed, you know, to build up, you know, and actually moving from one communicator to the next was a bit slower. But then again, that was not the spirit world. That was me.
Yes, yeah.
That was me thinking, hold on, I want to double check. Have I got something here? You know, you're doubting yourself slightly, so you're double checking all the time. So I'm just slowing them down. You know, they're sat there sort of tapping their fingers, going, "Will he get on with it? You know, we are here. You know."
Yes.
And then over the period of time, you know, you build that confidence of going, well, you know, they're there. You know, they won't let me down. You know, and you know, it's just me. I've got to make sure I get myself in the right place to do the right job with them.
Yes, and many of us that are in this movement, as we said, are coming through bereavement or natural mediumship or an interest like yourself, and find you developing. But we read so much literature and see so many other mediums. So who's been your biggest inspiration, either in your spiritual or your normal life, or both, if you like? But just tell us a few about the few of the people who've inspired you.
Yeah, I must admit, I think as, you know, you've got what you've said when you talk to Tim and Libby, you know, there are people of the past that inspire you. I must admit, I do like the stories of what I call the older mediums that have gone before. The one that I really love is the sort of stories of Doris Collins, because I actually attended and I got a message from Doris in a theatre. It's the only time I ever got a message was from Doris, and she was, you know, it was just the energy that she had in this place was absolutely amazing, and it was almost like, you know, her evidence was so spot on. And it was a bit like the other interesting thing I always found with her is she always reminded my mum, my grandmother that had gone over. And I think that could have been it. You know, the fact is this sort of straightforwardness. And she was the one that had come through and said about healing. That was my grandmother. And, you know, you've got many people of the past that I've read about, stories about. Obviously, you know, you've got the stories about Gordon Higginson and people like that. who were, you know, they were more than just all rounders, you know. And I think that's the thing that these days, you know, you don't have to limit yourself, and people tend to look at it and go, well, I'm just going to be an evidential medium. Well, they gave up and said to the spirit world, well, I will be whatever you need to be at whatever stage.
Yes.
So they were, you know, they were very good trance mediums. Some of them, you know, very good physical mediums. Some of them were excellent, as I said, evidential mediums. And, you know, and the one that, again, another one I love the stories about of the past is the gentleman Albert Best.
Oh, yes, I know. Well, I didn't know him. I know of him.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've never met him. I was lucky enough once in a trance sitting with a very good trance medium. He actually did come through to speak to me. So I was very privileged because he knew of my interest in him. But of course, you know, for those that, you know, may not be quite as, you know, as young as us two, you know, of course, he was the footballer's Georgie Best's uncle, you know.
Yes.
And, you know,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, oh, didn't you? Yeah, yeah. And he is, as I said, I love the stories about Albert. You know, and I love stories anyway. But I felt as if, you know, when you look at those sort of people, they were saying to the spirit world, "Well, use me in the way that you need to use me." You know, they were not restrictive in any way. And then, of course, the other time when I was sort of progressing, I think we're lucky enough in those days that we used to have the SAGB, which is the Spiritist Association of Great Britain in London. They used to run what they used to call cavalcades of mediums. So they would have a day when you would have literally mediums that demonstrating all day. So you would have the likes of Colin Fry there, Ron Jordan, you know, Brian Gibson, you know, and it was a bit like you were getting to see different mediums working in different ways. And to me, yeah, people. I have been accused of being what they call I suppose a spiritual train spotter, really, because I love to go and see these things. You know, I get a buzz out of them. You know, so
Yes.
well, I think some people say I'm sad like that, but there you go. But they were very educational as well, because they were so different. You were seeing to see how not only were they doing their mediumship and their evidence, but how they were bringing the part of them to this as well. Their personalities, yes. Who they were. So, you know, from that point of view, I think, you know, I learned a lot from watching them. And it was, as I said, to me, it was a great day out, you know.
Yeah. It's a lovely interview. I'm really enjoying this interview now. I first got to know you best through your trance mediumship. You came on my courses and different things. And so tell us, when were you drawn to the trance mediumship and begin that side of your mediumship development?
I think the fact is that I got certain messages from the platform, as you often do, that said about trance and that. And it was one of those sort of things I was thinking, well, yeah, I'm interested in trance, so I'll attend a few sort of workshops and that. But I suppose in those days I was actually myself mainly sort of concentrating on what I call my mental mediumship. It was in those days, I think I didn't realize at that stage that actually sitting for trance was going to actually benefit my mental mediumship as well, you know. So it was a bit like, oh, yeah, it was that stage when I finally sort of realized actually, you know, that they do go hand in hand. One will benefit the other, you know. And I suppose we've been sitting for about 4 or 5 years for development in trance. And over the period of time, I have, you know, been taught by several different people who are very good mediums and trance mediums, and benefited from their teaching. So the fact is that they sort of gave me exercises to do where I could actually investigate the trance energy, but also get to understand how I was going to work with the spirit world within this.
Yes.
And then progress from the fact of actually, you know, right, I've got this, right, now the spirit world, really, how do you want me to work with this? You know, what works best between the two of us? And I think it's been a bit of a journey over those years to actually come to that place.
Yeah.
Again, it's been exciting, yeah.
Yeah. Now, I know that you demonstrate trance on Facebook. If you'd like to give your page a plug.
Yeah, I could say you'll find me under my actual name of Andy Ford. And yeah, you're quite right. I've done most of my trance demonstrations have been on Facebook or on a productions company live streamed some questions and answers one night. So I from that point of view, I like Facebook because you can reach so many places, even like we're doing now, from your armchair.
Yes.
So from that point of view, I think, yeah, Facebook can be a very powerful tool in that way. So I do like, I've got talking to somebody at the moment. I want to do another sort of questions and answers session, which we're going to look at setting up. I did one last year with actually when a lady set it up in her flat. We got 20 people in her flat. That was quite an experience. Yeah, they did manage to have their own chairs, and did a sort of a questions and answer session live with them, as actually having an audience there live. And then, of course, last year I started also to actually teach trance as well. So these days, I will bring an aspect of people trying different things, because this is what I was actually given to help me in the past, and then say, well, actually, I've got to a stage now, well, this is how it works for me. Try that as well. Because again, it's a bit like, as we know, one size doesn't fit all.
Yeah.
It's actually people experimenting to find what actually works best for me, what actually works best for me and the spirit world. So, when I run the workshops, I like to sort of do it in that way, so that people get the most they can out of it, and gives them something to go away and practice, something to sit with from that point of view. So anything like that, I shall be sort of posting onto my Facebook page, and, and looking forward to doing more of that sort of, especially in the near future.
Thanks. So if you want to see Andy demonstrating, go onto his Facebook page, Andy Ford, and join him as a friend, and try to get him on Messenger. Tell him why you want to be a friend, because sometimes we get so many friends requests that we don't even know. So if you do want to watch his trance dems, get him on Messenger on Facebook, tell him who you are, then it's easier to accept the friendship. I find I reject so many, and I'm not saying that in a bad way, but I don't know a lot of the people. Those that messenger me and they say, oh, Martin, I've seen your trance groups, can I join your trance group? I add them as a friend, and then I know why they're speaking to me. So if you do want to watch Andy's trance demonstrations, try to go through Messenger and tell him why you want to be. I've sent you a friend request, please add me to your list, and tell him why. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I want to get to education now, Andy, because you've touched on how you've studied. You've obviously studied with the SNU, through the healing and different things like that. And you've also studied through my own training company, which is TS Fellowship training. And you passed our own qualifications that were written and accredited by Focus Awards. But most recently, you become a qualified adult education trainer through my company, which sadly that side of the company we've had to let go, because with no students, we had to get rid of the office because we couldn't afford the overheads. But education is very important to you, and normally I've handed you certificates face to face and congratulated you. So I'm going to do it publicly now and just say, well done on passing. It was a bit of a blip to begin with, wasn't it? And a resubmission. Yeah. The training company accepted your submissions, and you're now a level 3 AET trainer. And there's an element of assessing in there, so you can train and assess people now. So congratulations on behalf of the company there. But there's a lot of people who say that you don't need education and mediumship. The spirit world will teach you everything. What's your take on that, and why do you have such a passion for education within mediumship and spiritualism?
I think that there's, as we know, there's many levels to being educated, and yep, they're quite right. The spirit world can actually teach you a lot, because they are one of our greatest teachers. But that's also the fact we also need, I think, to experience teaching within this environment, our physical world. So that is not only that to me is the development not only of my own abilities, but also it's a development of my own spirit as well. Because I think, through actually, I live in this physical environment. So actually, then there are things within this physical environment that actually impact on my mediumship. So the fact is that, you know, I need to understand things personally. I need to understand the law because I'm working out there in the public. So really, what is the law saying about me, and what is the law saying I should do and what I can't do? Because the fact is that, you know, within that, do you have a responsibility, not only to yourself, but to the people that you're giving messages to, also, I think, to the spirit world, to be fully informed about things. You know, there are, these days we come under, or at the moment, underneath the European Act, the Consumers Protection Act, which actually treats us very much like a business. Yes. So we are looked at under the law as a business. So the fact is that, you know, I need to understand that. I need to understand how I might be viewed and how I am viewed. The other thing within that, by actually taking the qualifications, I'm actually trying to show people, actually, you know, this to me, I take this seriously. You know, this is something that I feel as if needs to be done and presented professionally, needs to be done right. And through that, then I think that, you know, things like the qualifications that you offer actually show that, you know, I am investing time, I'm investing in this for my own development, my own professionalism, to make sure I get it right, I do it right, and the fact that, you know, that the members of the public are going to be safe and thought about within this process. And yes, they can be shown that I have, you know, put the effort into, you know, to developing this to the level that I can be assessed at. Yes. And again, I feel as if this is very important, that you know, this is one aspect of my development, besides me continuing to look and see how to progress my actual mediumship, my trance, by attending, your actual workshops, you know. Over the time, I've been lucky enough to, as I said, have other teachers. One of them that you had on recently, Tim Abbott, you know, who has also taught me a lot. Sheila French as well, from the trance angle, have taught me a lot. So, you know, I think the fact is there are some great teachers out there that will teach you within this reality, and also teach you presentation, teach you how really to investigate your own spirit and how this is affecting you, that sort of thing. But going back to the educational, the actual, as I said, you know, the courses you put on from the TS Fellowship, I think they give you a grounding, they give you a good focus, they give you the information you need to look at from the environment that you're living in, which is this world.
Yes. Yeah, well, thank you. And for those mediums who I know Andy explained it, but if you want to know the law that governs you, it's the Consumer Protection from Unfair Trading Regulations of 2008. Just go and look it up, and you'll find that Andy's quite right, that they do treat us like a business. And if you're charging for your services, then you really need to be aware of what the Consumer Protection Regulations say about the taking of money and the giving back of money if we're not serving or giving what we've offered. So be careful how you advertise yourselves. One of the words that we get in spiritualism, obviously, is spiritual. And I find people overuse it nowadays. Oh, he's this spiritual and that spiritual. And dare I say this, I've been in the company of some people who everybody say they're very spiritual, and yet they haven't expressed a very spiritual attitude. And I personally, I don't think I need to be told whether I'm spiritual or not. It's something you either keep quiet. You don't need to advertise how spiritual you are. And I was just wondering, you know, your acts and deeds will define how spiritual you are. So people need to look at themselves when they've been blessed with that word spiritual. I'd like to ask you what you think the word spiritual means to you, being spiritual means to you.
I think you sort of hit the nail on the head. I think the fact is that being spiritual is part and parcel of who you are, how you live your life, and how you treat others. Quite right. The fact is that we are also human beings. You know, we don't get everything right, and you know, some of our decisions in the past may not have been the greatest of decisions. So from that, I think it's also part and parcel of being spiritual is actually learning by what has happened to us, why we've done certain things, what's happened to us. Also, the fact is perhaps what other people may have impacted on our lives, because there are lessons to be learned for us to be able to grow. And I think from that aspect of our lives and how we look at it, then we would, that's part of parcel of our spiritual growth. I'm not saying that, I'm not, as they used to, what's it, coin the phrase, I'm not all love and light. Because I don't sit on a cloud with a harp. I'm not perfect. And I often joke with people and say, I know that comes a bit of a shock to you that I'm not perfect, but I'm not. We are human. We do make these mistakes. We have an earthly life to live. But I believe it's the fact of the spirituality is trying to follow. I'm trying to follow that pathway where really I am the best as I can, trying to treat others as I would want to be treated, to try and consider others as I would want to be considered.
Yes.
Sometimes they say, that sets you up for a bit of a fall. Well, it is what we are. And I think the fact is, as I said, it's people sometimes look at it and go, oh, you're a spiritualist. It's a religion. Yes, it is. But to me, it's far more than that. To being spiritual, it's part and parcel of your everyday life. It's not just on a Sunday, it is part and parcel of what you're living, how you're living it, and how you're treating others. Yes. And as I said, at times the actual lessons that come from perhaps things that happen to us that aren't the best in life, really.
Okay, I've really enjoyed this interview, Andy. But before we go, I'm going to ask the question that I've asked all my guests, because we've all been along different pathways of enlightenment and development, and particularly in mediumship. No two pathways are the same. People might say, well, you've all talked about sitting in the circle and you've all talked about this, but we all have these individual mediumistic experiences on the journey. So if you had one piece of advice to give to somebody who's coming into this, what would it be?
The piece of advice I give, and I'm going to say there is a little bit of a funny story that goes with this, so I'll add that at the end. It's important, as I said earlier, the fact that really, it's your, I think, I won't say, don't always say use blend because we're using technical terms now, but it's actually your relationship with the spirit world. So the fact is, I often say to people when I'm teaching, I look up and say, what I'm going to teach you now is Costa Coffee mediumship. And I said, the reason I call that is I said, you wouldn't sit down in a having a Costa Coffee, and I should say other coffee houses are available, of course. The fact is that when you sit down to have a coffee with a friend, you don't just sit there and look at them. Yeah. You interact with them. You talk to them. You ask them questions. It is, especially if you're meeting for somebody for the first time, you've got all these things in your head that you want to know about them. So do the same with the spirit world. Sit down with them so that you are literally that close to them, that you're going to have that relationship so you can have a good old chat to them. I always say, be nosy. I mean, I'm very nosy. I want to know, I'm terrible with the living, let alone with the ever living, but there you go. So as I said, to me, it's like having that coffee experience. But as I said, there was a funny thing that happened once. I was in, I think, one of these shopping villages near Southampton with a friend of mine, and she'd done a bit of shopping. It was late in the afternoon. She said, do you want a coffee before we go? And I said, well, yeah, I could do something like that. She said, well, I'll take the stuff back to the car. She said, do you want to go and order it? I said, yeah. She said, well, get me a cup of tea. I said, well, all right. Well, so I walked into Costa. It was near enough empty, but there was a lady there. The baby was it was airing its lungs. I mean, it was really giving some good, verbals, really showing it. So I went out to order, and the lady behind the till, and I said, oh, can I have 2 cups of tea, please? And then this lady's voice said, oh, that baby's not very happy. And I turned around and said, no, it's not. And I looked at the woman and thought, oh, you haven't said anything, and you haven't heard the voice that I just heard. And I thought, you're winding me up. Here I'm in Costa, and you're doing Costa Coffee mediumship on me, and you think this is funny. So the spirit world do have a very good sense of humour.
Yes, yeah.
But I do say that go back to the point. I think that, yeah, really, it's have that closeness of that relationship, and have that conversation with them.
Yes.
Be nosy, because that will be the information that will give you the depth that the client or whoever the recipient will love. You know.
Yes, thanks, Andy. Sadly, our time's coming to an end.
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed sitting with Andy Ford with me on the couch today. I've enjoyed the interview. And once again, congratulations, Andy, on gaining your level 3 in the adult education training. And I wish you all the best for the future. And thank you for being on the couch.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you, Martin. Bless you. Thank you.
Thank you.